Here's a question. What if you knew that December 25th, Christmas Day, was the day that you were going to wake up dead? Our life would have to change, right? The way we would live Advent would have to change. If you want to join me every day of this upcoming Advent from December 1st to December 25th, go to ascensionpress.com/FatherMikeAdvent. To join, download the Ascension app today. I think when people see bishops, they think, oh, here's someone who has it all figured out. This is someone who's always like known the Lord. Yeah. So the difference between saying your prayers, like we get taught our prayers, versus the difference of praying. Was there ever a time where you realized, okay, now I'm actually not just repeating, now I'm actually praying?
You know, when I was a student at Catholic U, so many years ago, I was maybe 20, and my great mentor there was Monsignor Sokolowski, who was this great philosopher, theologian. And so we're these young seminarians, and he was maybe in his 40s at the time. And he's saying, some people say that God is the most important person in their life, but they never talk to him. Isn't that weird? And we all thought, I remember thinking, yeah, that is weird. And that prompted me, even though I wasn't obliged yet, I got the little one volume of the Liturgy of the Hours, and to pray that on a regular basis. Now, some of that is trying to work your way through the rote prayers and all that, and learn the ribbons. But I kept Sokolowski's words in my mind, like, yeah, that is weird. If I'm really saying God is the center of my life, God's the most important person in my life, but I'm not speaking to him regularly, that makes zero sense. And I think that's when I started in a more conscious way to say, yes, I'm talking to someone. I'm in a personal dialogue with somebody.
Was that with the Liturgy of the Hours, right?
Yes, it kind of
was that a way that kind of?
Yeah, for me it was, and the very discipline of it was good. Yeah. If you got a friend, and it's not like some terrible obligation, but you realize, no, I really need to spend time with this person. If I want to cultivate this friendship, it can't just be an abstraction, like, oh yeah, he and I are great friends, or no, you have to instantiate that. And the Liturgy of the Hours began to mean that for me. Like, okay, I'm going to regularly reach out to this friend of mine. And even when I'm not in the mood particularly, or I'm not like in a super prayerful frame of mind, I don't care, pray. I don't care, spend the time,
right.
I've often repeated that line from Thomas Merton when someone asked him, what's the best thing I can do to help my prayer life? And his answer was, take the time. Yeah. He didn't give some highfalutin advice. It was, take the time. Make sure you dedicate time to this friendship.
What's that sense of if you show me your calendar, I'll show you what you care about?
Quite right. One of my pet peeves, I'm critiquing myself here, is priests, have these super, super busy calendars. That is not good, really.
Right. I agree.
The two of us, But the culture teaches us to reverence that. Yeah. Like, boy, oh boy, that guy, that's a busy guy. He's successful and accomplished. That's not good, though, if you're a spiritual person. And that's why I see now, this is in relatively recent years, when I've gotten super dedicated to the Holy Hour. I'll say it humbly. My students at Mundelein really got me back online with the Holy Hour. When my generation was going through school, we didn't do that. If you said, hey, I've done your Holy Hour, we wouldn't have known what you were talking about, really. But in the post-John Paul II, and then when Fulton Sheen's influences felt, a lot of the young guys, that became very important. So I would see them at Mundelein. And so I started doing that in a much more focused way. That made a revolutionary difference in my prayer life. Now, I couldn't live without it. Yeah. I'm a morning guy. I wake up early, and the first hour is the Holy Hour. Yeah. And I love it. I really mean that. Now, if I miss it, like even now in a hotel here, when you're away from it's just harder for me.
It's different. Yeah.
It's different. And there's Merton again. Take the time. Take the time. And let it be an hour, which is a long time. Now, I'll pray my office, I'll pray rosary, a Jesus prayer, I'll think about a sermon. Mm-hmm. John Paul II would bring his paper and pencil in to the Holy Hour and write down ideas for sermons. And Sheen said that. Remember, what do you do during a Holy Hour? He said, whatever you want.
Whatever you want.
As long as you spend
there.
the time. Right.
Yeah.
That's super important. It's like you're standing a post, and you're waiting for the Lord to give you a command, and you're, okay, I'm open to that, and I'm listening. So that, to me, is the most important thing now.
Yeah, that's, I'm going to come back to that in a second, but you mentioned the Liturgy of the Hours. And so I remember in seminary, we would pray morning prayer together and evening prayer and all these, but the 5 hours of the day.
Right.
I don't think before I was ordained a deacon, I think I prayed all 5 in one day once.
Right.
But then the day you're ordained a deacon, you're making a promise you're going to do it from now on. I remember the night before, the thing I was most nervous about was, oh my gosh, starting tomorrow, I can never miss. Like I have to show up because for me, a lot, the Psalms and the Canticles, it was pretty dry. I was like, okay, I don't know. I'm not feeling these words and I don't know what I'm doing. But something happened. I just kept doing it, kept showing up.
Right.
And I remember it might've been my second year after I was ordained a priest. I was on a silent retreat here in Minnesota at Potchman Terrace. The hermitages in the middle of the woods. I was walking, it was January, it was super cold out, and I was just walking on these paths and I was trying to pray, just talk to God, and I didn't have the words here or in my mind. And I just started spontaneously praying the Psalms.
Yeah.
And like, oh, I've spent the last 3 years now praying these Psalms every single day that they became my prayer. And it was one of those things that it just all of a sudden, and I realized oftentimes that's what the rote prayers are for, is I don't have the words on my own.
Right.
And so I'm praying scripture, I don't have the words on my own, but oh God, you gave us these words that I can now give back to you because they're capturing something that I want to say, but I don't have the capacity to say it.
Yeah, quite right. And so I found this, as I move through my life, it has gotten easier. I think as a young guy, maybe you're distracted by things or maybe you're not mature enough to move into that language. I find it easier to pray now. I really do. So when you talked about, you're newly ordained and I've got this obligation, in a way, it is tougher when you're that young and you haven't experienced life as much. You haven't had the ups and downs. You know that the night prayer on Friday, and we prayed it last night, that psalm, when you're a young guy, it's like, well, I don't know, that's not my experience. I'm lying among the dead and, but as you get older, you're like, oh, I get it.
Yeah, I get it. My own companion is darkness.
And I know, that's right, my one companion is darkness. And I have experienced this sometimes, and I've known a lot of people who've experienced that. The Psalms get better that way. They get easier to pray. And I do find it easier. When I was 26, if you would say now, every single morning, 1 hour of prayer, I would have found that difficult.
Yeah.
I don't now. And I'm not bragging. It just happens that way. I think as you mature, it's a lot easier to pray, I find.
And I find a problem when I'm trying to fit prayer into my life or fit God into my life. I'm trying to shoehorn God into a pre-existing environment versus
that won't work.
Okay, I'm going to build my life around the Lord.
Right.
And so my schedule comes after God. What do you get first?
That's why for me, and I'm a morning guy, but it's good for me to begin the day. That's the first thing that I do. And there's no competition with it. There's no one calling me or interrupting me. But boy, it's hard to do though, to say I'm structuring my life around prayer rather than prayer around, my life, whatever that is. Because your life is the friendship with the Lord. And then the rest of it follows.